in community and hear each other's voices. So what you just heard is the first order of business is to let everyone know that you are being recorded. We want to record this for posterity. I'm assuming people would also want to have this for their records. But yes, you are being recorded. So we will remind you of this throughout the program, just so in case there are new people joining, they'll also be apprised of that knowledge. And in case you've forgotten, it'll be a gentle reminder. One of the things I'd like you to also recognize as we move through this is that though we may have seen many of your names in print, we may not know how to correctly pronounce them. So be forgiving of us if we do pronounce a name incorrectly, but also say your name if we do pronounce it incorrectly, and that'll be just fine. I'm going to ask everyone to please stay muted until it is your time to read. Please do so, because there's nothing or few things more disconcerting than a person about to deliver the coup de grace of a line, and then next thing you know, we hear someone saying they can't find socks, or we hear a dog barking, or we hear all kinds of other noises we don't need to hear. But yes, we'd like to have our ears filled with poetry, filled with metaphor and simile and all this beautiful stuff of language. And so please just be respectful and give everybody else their space to be heard. And speaking of respectful and space, we're going to ask you to really stick to a tight 10 minutes, so that everyone can get a chance to read. We will also be putting your bios and your purchase information in the chat. So please, everyone, monitor the chat and see everyone's bios and purchase information. Please don't be one of those poets who never buys anybody else's book. All right, be that person who buys everybody else's book that you can afford to buy. So please look in the bios and look in the chat for that. And after we do the first 5 readers, we'll be taking a 5-minute break. And then we'll be introducing, another host will come back to speak with you, introducing the next 5 readers. So with that being said, I'd like to bring up the very first reader right now. Will you please welcome Denise Provost?
Thank you, Reggie and New England Poetry Club. I'm Denise Provost. I'll be reading from my chapbook, Curious Peach, which is a walk through the seasons inspired by the metaphysical poet Andrew Marvell. Northern Equinox. Up here, the year is just coming awake, half dozing and still bare. The earth has thrown off this year's frozen woe. Here lie exposed this landscape's underlying granite bones, where free of moss and lichen, gray strata sparkle as morning light glints on mica. Each evening, spring peepers and leopard frogs call out in joyful chorus from the bogs, where fresh skunk cabbages luxuriate. On grassy banks, dull but now free of snow, are scattered clumps where Quaker ladies grow, pale blue and delicate. Down by the marsh, the red-winged blackbirds startle, quick to cry, whole flock complaining harshly as they fly. Release. The tender season passes fleetingly in these hard latitudes where we make home. We live 6 months in winter's monochrome, banished to half light like Persephone, until the springtime sets the colors free, and rising life within each organism beguiles us with bright April's pointillism, dotting our landscape so deliberately. Leaf buds upon the maples dashed with red, the jottings of the brightest yellow crayon mark daffodils, and the forsythias spread, then lighter, tinged with green. The willow's fan of branches frames the sky reflecting thread of a spangled stream, which wanders where it can. How the solstice comes. The mockingbird is frantic with desire. Trilling, he calls his lover summer in, unceasingly with unconsuming fire, singing his notes of urgent conjuring. The mockingbird awakes before the dawn and starts to woo the sleeping sun to rise. To the plaintive seduction of his song, the planets move, the world opens its eyes. The mockingbird could sit atop my hand, yet its broad voice is taller than the trees, and all who hear him sing can understand his joy, desire, and his ecstasy. The weight of all creation on his wings, the mockingbird so light, so lightly sings. Encore. This summer was too hot for runner beans. They wouldn't even blossom in such heat, but produced only a cascade of leaves, huge, heart-shaped, hung in shingled stacks of green. In autumn, they produced a cautious bloom, their big-lipped flowers peering out below, an ample shade of foliage that grows in snaking twists upon a tent of poles. Late in the fall, I rake my fingers through the luscious tangle of the still green vines. Within their deep interior, I find a plenitude of long, sweet beans that grew half hidden there. Who could anticipate from these old plants a harvest come so late? Self-expression. The falling rain experiments with form. Its aspiration is to become snow, and yet the evening air is still too warm for crystallization. Each droplet grows into such altered state as it can reach. The frozen rain bulks up, but remains splash. It longs to have the elegance of sleet, whose angular Art Deco forms have dash and make a sharp sensation on the face. More memorable in their own way, perhaps, than pelting slush, whose brutish shapes replace granules with stinging clumps. I yearn to grasp how rain's imagination leaps so far as to emerge in fine, six-sided stars. And I'll end with Curious Peach. I came into this world with wings, fleshy, pale pink, silken things. Soon they fluttered to the grass. My winged beginning did not last. Rosy bristles crowned my youth, but ornament spoke not my truth. Or star-shaped brackets for a spell, until in time these soft threads fell. I entered in my awkward age. No shred of glory to assuage. A bulking orb with spiky end. What future could this shape portend? Next, smoothly green with downy hairs, still nothing fit to put on airs. My life, though slow, passed without pain as I embodied sun and rain. I grew in weight and also girth, veiled from the meaning of my birth. Just what can my true nature be, attached as I am to a tree? Through rising heat and storm's surprise, I reached the fullness of my size. Rough winds have brought my fellows low, but I withstood the sundering blow. I start to feel I'm getting old, my flesh grown heavy, soft, and gold. With gentle turning of a hand, upon a bed of flesh I land. Then feel around myself a wreath of hard, sharp-edged human teeth. In ecstasy, I am reduced to luscious pulp and streaming juice. My fall has come. I tumble down into rich earth, the peach tree's ground, a tiny orchard made to rise within a garden paradise. I'm used to waiting, it's not hard. Here in a sheltered bit of yard, the days cool off, the light is less. Among the earthworms I will rest. Now at my core myself does sit, a perfect seed in stony pit. I see a shape that I might be full grown, a wide and fruitful tree. As frozen soil yields to spring's thaw, I fill with movement and with awe. As to the sky my green pulse shoots, I grow not just to wings, but roots. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me make sure I can be seen here. Thank you so much, Denise, for giving us that wonderful work, those beautiful poems, the music of it. I heard at least one sonnet in there, and I absolutely loved, who could have anticipated from these old plants, a harvest comes too late, or so late, or too late. I forgot which one it was, but thank you for that lovely music. Next up, and also thank you for being beautifully under 10 minutes. That was really good of you. So just to remind everybody, you do have 10 minutes of your time, for your time, and we'll give you a gentle reminder just in case you're going over 10 minutes. So our next wonderful poet up, please be welcoming to Diane Tarby.
Finding the unmute is sometimes the hardest things we have to do. Thank you, Reggie. I have very thankful to be here, certainly, and thankful to New England Poetry Club for organizing this platform to bring us together. It certainly is an honor and a pleasure to be here. I have selected 4 poems from my first book, which is entitled From the Heart. My intent in writing this book was to provide words of hope and inspiration to others, along with comfort during these difficult times of the pandemic we faced in 2020 and certainly are still facing today. The first is from chapter 2, called The Times of My Life. I felt it is through these lens of life that my stories and my poems are told. Sometimes it's a single moment, most often an experience. I think that the words were meant to articulate what surfaced and have now, for me, become memories. I felt it appropriate seeing we are one day removed from what is the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Every year I write about 9/11 because I was there. So I'm going to write the one that I included in my book, which was from the 19th year, and I called it 19 years since 9/11. How could that possibly be true? That's how many years it has been since 9/11/01. I shall never forget what happened on that day, as I was in New York City at a meeting with one of Verizon's best presidents on the 40th floor of 1095 of the Avenue of the Americas. Our meeting was at 8 a.m. The day was one of the longest I have ever spent. It was life-altering, a life-defining moment as I worked to make sense of it all and of all that had ultimately transpired. Hearing first the news that something horrible had happened, and then seeing the smoke, that horrific view and warlike scenario right before my eyes from the 41st floor of 1095 was mind-blowing, to say the least. It permanently resides in my mind's eye, a view I will never forget. Working side by side with my colleagues, we worked hard to restore the network as quickly as we could. The thought that is still with me to this day is how everyone pulled together and did all they could to make a difference for themselves, for their company, and for their nation. The stories, oh, the stories. There are so many I could share. But suffice to say, so have many others who were there on that fateful day. I sat with the leaders who planned the best way through 40 days and many long nights, the rehab of Manhattan piece by piece, beginning with the financial sector, where we all had much to lose. What I best remember all these years later was that we never, ever stopped until our tasks were complete. It was April or May of the next year, I think, before business returned to normal and we all got back to the routine. A promise I made to myself as I went through this ordeal was that I would honor all the lives lost for the rest of my entire life by volunteering and giving back in my hometown community. As we all take pause on the anniversary of this tragedy, I shall always remember my colleagues and my friends who worked side by side with me in the worst of times, doing all they possibly could to restore the network and get New York City communications back. But most of all, my thoughts will be with the families as I mourn with them the loss of all the people who perished that day: workers, firefighters, police, EMTs. I shall forever hold deep within a special place in my heart that aches, in my mind that will never forget what happened on this day. The second poem and the second and third are from chapter 3, Words of Inspiration and Hope. Included in this chapter are poems of inspiration that are meant to bring us to that place where dreams come true, to help us get there and to that place that we always want to be. And it's entitled, Where Are You on Your Mountain? The climb is often tough. Sometimes I have to stop, take a breath, and be thankful for the view I see at the top. I have worked so hard to get here, to that place I want to be. It is clear that I am not done yet. I still have many more steps to climb right in front of me. I don't give myself enough credit. I often sell myself short, not realizing that I am worthy, that all my small wins have value. They will get me to the top. It is with this open mindset and a renewed belief in self, I will move slowly forward and continue on as my journey has momentum and the mountain top seems near. I shall appreciate each step I take and each person I meet along the way as they become fond memories that help me reach the destination before me. I am here to tell you that you too can make that climb. First, find your own mountain, fix it squarely in your mind, have faith and belief in self firmly aligned with the realization that your time has finally come. Your mountain is awaiting you. Your journey has begun. Third one is entitled, When Wishes and Dreams Come True. What could possibly compare to the day? And I would say, much like a day like today, which I was so very happy that it was so nice out today. The beauty it brings as I sit and watch the day begin, I am struck by what it presents. No better picture could I paint to compare to the reality before me. Even though our lives aren't perfect, it is days like this that motivate and cheer us on. Don't blink. As the days pass far too quickly, we must admire the here and now, knowing that living in the present and the decisions that we make are what is most important. It is at the in-between place where the sand meets the water and the sky, the water, the sky, and the sky, the clouds, that peace and tranquility resides. Dreams may be found here. Enjoy this day and every day presented to you. As it comes your way, find the good and make it great, knowing you have the power within your heart and mind to make your wishes and your dreams come true, as I see mine right before my eyes. My last poem is from chapter 7, and it's Living a Life of Peace. And from that chapter, and the poem is actually of the same name, Living a Life of Peace. As I sit by the lake and wonder, what is the best I can do for myself? how can I get where I want to be? What I have learned is that life can be simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. There is beauty all around us, everywhere we look. It is here by the water that I believe I have it figured out. Stop negotiating with yourself. Entertain no other option. Work hard towards the life you wish. Once your mindset is wide open and the due diligence has been done, you will have achieved your lifelong mission of living the life you wish. Fill it with all that means the most to you, surrounded by good health, wealth, and happiness. It is here that the good life can be found, a life of peace and love. Thank you for listening to me today. I appreciate it.
And thank you. Thank you so much, Diane, for giving us those messages of hope. I'll take away from this, your mountain is awaiting you, right? And I think all of us would probably have figured it out the last couple of years. There's a mountain. And I also appreciate that first piece about 9/11, showing that we human beings aren't always so damnable, that we can pull together with each other once we've identified something. And I think we need to be reminded of that. So thank you for doing that for us.
You're welcome. My pleasure, Reggie.
Sure. Everyone, remember that you can look at Diane's bio and all the other poets' bios and their purchase information in the chat. And also, I would suggest that if you hear a line that strikes you or something that makes you, dive deeper into yourself, maybe just drop them a little something in the chat too. Nothing feels better than after you've done something, you go into the chat, you see that people are responding to what you're saying enthusiastically. So please go ahead and do that for them. I will remind everyone again, in case you're just joining, that we are being recorded. So do understand that, do know that. And next up, we are going to bring you the poetry of Lillo Way.
Greetings from Seattle. I'm Lillo, and thanks to everyone at New England Poetry Club, all of today's readers and hosts, and everyone watching and listening. I am especially delighted to be sharing a screen with Reggie GIBSON, who is one of my heroes. I'd like to read just one longish poem for you today, which is in my new book, Lend Me Your Wings. And if there's time at the end, I'll read the short poem Reggie chose for the E.E. Cummings Prize. This longer one is a kind of rollicking, crazy-ass poem called Barn Lit by a Duck Egg. A couple of notes about this poem. It refers to Keith Haring, a pop artist from the 1980s, and to Charles Birchfield, an early 20th century American artist, to Olivier Messiaen, a 20th century composer. Both Birchfield and Messiaen were synergists. Each of them expressed the colors and shapes. Each of them expressed this synergy being a dual sensual experience. Birchfield expressed it in hearing, he heard sounds from colors and shapes. And Messiaen saw colors and patterns embedded in musical sounds. And two other little notes, you'll hear the word gilt. It's G-I-L-T as in gold gilt. And the phrase roc's ox egg, which was stolen from James Joyce's Ulysses. The poem is in 5 short sections and has a dedication. It is for the poet Natalie Diaz. Barn lit by a duck egg. 1. O spheroid, O perfect thing, O white in this case, O brown in another. O thin shell, transparent prehistoria, transporting splendent from one place to another, from inside to outside, where we crouch on these rotting wet boards in the pig-reeking dark. From nest to table, rolling light through veins, through skin thin as paper tissue, you issue morning, day, fire. I've named you Edison, little Eddie Egg. I don't know what's going on inside there, and I'm not about to crack the only luminous surface in this albuminous room, smelling of goat and fowl. 2. Egg still glowing warm from the heart-beating body of your mother, heating my palm while frosting it in duck dung. Egg of lopsided midnight, bottom first you present, and will balance if conditions are right. Oh, candling egg, if only I could be as perfect as you, one organic, smooth-skinned beauty with no sticking out appendages, no awk-angled fingers and toes, no nose. I'll roll your luminosity in my palms, switch from right to left, toss you like a juggler, and catch you in my lamp-lit mouth. 3. There's nothing an egg can't be. It births 1,000 mythologies. It pours out the breaking point, smells like the pouring paste, camouflaging the sulfur until the heat's on and stays on. Little milky knot of attachment. Tomorrow I'll go ahead and eat you or strain you out, then whisk away the sun and its guilt, dilute it with pale reason, gobble you down. 4. A child finds a cracked egg, saves it in a shoebox, and swoons her first real swoon when she rediscovers it weeks later at the top of the closet behind Mr. Potato Head Medusified. Oh, egg's swan song. I slip Rock's ox egg between my legs and guide it in, no strings attached. And I'm a lit body, a Keith Haring lamp, radiating Birchfield vibrations in creams and sunflower. Listen, music of the night from an egg. Messiaen could see it, and we can too if we lean close, rest the egg in the pinna of our ear. It will sing us until we wake up. We'll dance to it and sway our Daffy Duck tails among the horsetail and lamb's tongue, hold hands with Birchfield's ears and Messiaen's eyes, link arms with all the synergists living in secret places where nothing brings on everything and everything happens at once. 5. It's raining on this duck egg now, but not enough to put out its light. Just polish it up, slip wheels under it, and roll it down the line like a new Volkswagen Bug, still sticky inside from its not birth. Backlit road map of the pointed world. There you see it. The light, tracing an unpredictable path, then bursting through, irradiating the barn. Oh, I'm doing fine. I get it. I think I have time to read the poem that Reggie chose. The title is Offering, and it has an epigraph which reads, for David S. Buckle, environmentalist and Lambda lawyer, who on April 14th, 2018, self-immolated in Prospect Park, Brooklyn. Offering. Come, lion tail, swing yourself, arch, strike the match, its shocking bloom. Flame hair devouring eye, satisfied. Lion hungry belly, fill with him that you might spare the children. You fire-breathing beasts of despair, with all your heads and horns, your long tail scales, fray the rope, tip the hope, balance farther, a little farther toward no more. Ting! The finger symbol rings flawless into the night. Ting! Twice more. Funeral flares fling embers into our ears before the final silence, when children's mouths will fill with ash. Unbuckle him, unburn him, unfuel his futile flames, re-gold them, unfossil the fumes, fold him in our unarmed arms. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. That poem is just as fantastic as I remember reading it. It's so good to have you put voice behind it. And also thank you for opening up with that wonderfully complex but humorous take on so much of the synesthetes, which Messiaen, as you told us, was synesthesia. So always appreciate hearing your work, Lillo. And thank you again for gracing us with that. Next up, we are going to bring you the wonderful poetry of Nicole M Young.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm coming to you from my back porch in Windsor, Connecticut. Thank you so much, Reggie, for hosting the section, and also for New England Poetry Club for bringing us together this afternoon. I want to give a very special shout out because I see some amazing friends here in the audience, Magdalena, Maria Luisa, and also Nina. Thank you so much for being here for this segment. Please be sure to join Magdalena and Maria Luisa for their segment later on this afternoon. I am turning on the timer to make sure that I don't go over. I'm going to read you 4 poems. They are iterations of the different works that are on my self-produced spoken word album, Input Live from the Valley. I write about women, uplifting one another, and self-discovery. The first piece, What May Be. Soul-searching, mind-jerking, assisted fantasies leads one to wonder. Heart aches, beats break, awkward interactions lead to question. One is uncertain they want answered. Minutes pass, hours pass, days pass. Delusions continue to contend with reality. Love from another, the hardest to gain. Love of another, the hardest to abstain. Love for another, the hardest to remain. My desired affections, parodies of love pursued and possessed only in dreams. The love pledged through conjured fables will one day mature into a mutually adored, co-authored beginning. The next work, After Audrey. To the little girl who grew up to be invincible in a world that deems her invisible. To the toddler who once leveled with stones who will soon look beyond the horizon as she reaches towards the sky. To the tween who stepped into her fierceness while acknowledging her fears. To the once little girl who broke through others' truths to discover her own destiny. To the one who discovered her prowess before she sought her wealth. To the one who, with ambition, were as awkward as an award. For those of us who continue to persist, aspiring for higher, even at the disdain of those with only doubts, apprehensions, and assumptions. For those of us, as we meet her with intention, may we greet her with conviction. May we only open doors for her that will lead her on the path, a blueprint of glee, prosperity, pleasures, victories, beauty, and peace. The next work, Mother. She sits displeased, congested in the condensation of her being, unsure of the rest of the unrest. One cannot be sure of her being there. She is unhappy, she is unsure. She cannot be what she could be, as we will not let her be of the being. She is of they, yet we cannot let her be thee. She sits waiting for a time that comes to know, one must know of thee. She can be an ancestor or of the unborn. Is she even here? She sits still, resistor of none but herself, for she gives to others, but not unto herself. She could be undone, yet herself could not be just that. For what is in her heart is in her hands, which translates into knowing that her nurture will be reciprocated with nothing but neglect. She sits wanting to catch her breath, to feel herself breathing, to know that she still breathes. Her singularity benefits the collected, yet she remains unable to collect herself from what remains of herself from the day to day. Her ritual is contained, containing what others need to remain, Still, she should see that her purpose coexists beyond our wants of her. She can desire, she can play, she can whet that appetite. She doesn't have to wait for us to grant her the permission to simply just be. And then the last work I have is At the End of It All. Tomorrow might be something. Next week, there might be nothing. Next year, you might be somewhere. Yesterday, was there really anything? Tonight, we could be anywhere. Within hours, we won't be here. Within minutes, we will be sure. Within days, tomorrow will be here. Next week will be here. Next year will be here. But just yesterday, there was really something. This minute be here, tonight be somewhere, today be someone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share the stage with you this afternoon.
Thank you, Nicole, for those wonderful pieces, for that shout out that you were given to. I think that the line I took down was, to the tween who stepped into her fierceness while acknowledging her fears, right? And can you hear me okay, everyone? I thought that was a wonderful, wonderful line. And I see that all the time when I'm working in schools, young women trying to find their way into the world, but at the same time, being afraid of what's around them. And that was a beautiful line. And also for the mother portrait as well. And I think you got a lot of love in the chat on that one. So you might want to look that up. Everyone, again, please look in the chat as well. And make sure that you see the people's bios and that they're also poets' bios and that they're also selling their work as well. And also, again, put something in the chat to just say, hey, you keep going. I love what you did. It's always a great thing to do. We have one more poet coming up in this gaggle. And it's been great before I get invited, just to let you know that this has been great to be a part of this, our very first one. And again, this is aspirational. We hope that there will be others, and I trust that there will be. So if you would welcome, be so kind as to welcome Dianalee Velie.
Very good pronunciation.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to read from my latest book, Italian Lesson. And my husband, Robert Pop, did the photographs that are inside, as well as the cover. And I wrote these poems while I had the opportunity several times to teach poetry in Italy. And I'm an Italian speaker wannabe. This first poem is called Italian Lesson. My Italian needs lots of help. The spongy coral-like object on my plate does not appear edible or anything like what I imagine a seasonal fish stew I thought I had ordered would look like. Poking at the glob with my fork, it wiggles as my knife struggles with the first cut. Proceeding with serious caution, the smallest possible piece makes its way to my suspecting palate. I have chewed softer gum. My mind starts screaming, don't swallow, and perspiration stains my silk blouse until with childlike deception, I lift my napkin to my lips, pat them delicately, and spit out the masticated mess. Inhaling a gulp of my wine, then air, I smile at the Sicilian waiter and then ask my husband in perfect Italian, "Che cosa è Buseca?" He answers in perfect English. One must develop a taste for Italy, signora, especially a taste for tripe. In Italy, a lot of the poems are about food. Ode to the ravioli I left behind. True to my fickle brain, I left you behind in the styrofoam to-go box, destined you to the restaurant's trash bin instead of providing me with 2 scrumptious lunches. You were perfection, aglow in olive oil, your little patty cakes of dough infused with emerald spinach and filled with fluffy ricotta. Sauteed peppers, broccoli, and mushrooms crowned your glory. Oh, to leave such perfection behind. Forgive me, please, and add this error to the temple of my transgressions. Unless, of course, I pray, our Italian waitress took you home to relish after her long shift, sitting in bed with her American boyfriend, seductively feeding each other tiny morsels of this stolen indulgence. This would grant me forgiveness and atonement. This would clean my plate. When I'm in Italy, I always daydream about living there part of the year. And it's only a daydream, but the daydreams are real. This is called Daydream. Palm trees and pines cohabitate in the frothy mist drifting over the chocolate Alps of Switzerland. The view from our bedroom in Canaro Riviera includes stucco ochre villages built into the hillside, one which I imagine we own. I can see myself picking fresh tomatoes and basil for my sauce and ruby red bougainvillea to adorn my dinner table, where rich dark Chianti awaits 2 pours. I see Bob leaning over the rail of his small fishing boat, a Bucchiello, jeans hugging his lower body, rustic jacket protecting him from the elements, his gray hair haloed in the sun while he catches dinner. Ours is a simple lakeside life where we are hypnotized into peace by the fairy dance of light on water. Here where the surrounding mountains create a chalice for this cold mountain lake water of Lago Maggiore. We will settle down like new lovers, wanting grapes and olives, sage and rosemary, the fruits of our late life union, until we become one with the beautiful earth again, sleeping in her bosom. Petrarch in Pride. I had my own horse for 24 years. And when I got to Italy, I didn't think I'd have a chance to ride, but I did. Petrarch in Pride, a Petrarchan sonnet. Riding the white stallion named Petrarch delights me as much as writing a sonnet in Petrarchan style. He does not know this poet brushing him, but his eyes show the spark of a reigning dictator, a monarch in this red barn in a Cortona hamlet. His coat now as smooth as snowy velvet, I prepare to saddle up and embark on this brave Italian adventure, knowing I am in for a wild ride. Confident and completely sure I can handle his untamed galloping stride, I herd him on through the pasture where he bucks me off with Petrarchan pride. When you're in Italy, besides food, there's a lot of art. And this is a sonnet, it's a Tezzarino sonnet. Sometimes what you see in person is more lovely than what you see in the museums. We have explored Florence's Uffizi, witnessed personally prominent works of priceless art, Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Botticelli, and the rest. But here in the Alps, beside a simple go-kart, in front of the rustic red house on his farm, Stefano stands tall, spare, and stark. A basket of onions is poised on his arm, while sunlight glistens in his olive skin, perspiration a part of his natural charm. He tosses us a heartbreaking grin set in aquiline features that make us faint, while we think of how many ways we can sin. This feast some female artist should paint, alas, some woman with great moral restraint. Thank you very much. Thank you, Reggie. Thank all the poets, the previous poets who read.
And thank you so much, Dianalee. Those were humorous and wonderful poems that brought us into the lovely thing about Italy. You have to open up with poems about food, right? I mean, there's just no other way to do it. And if you're gonna have tripe, you've got to have a sense of humor about it, right? I also love that line which you said, I forget, it was like, we settled down like new lovers. And you went on with sage, and it was just a wonderful line. I reveled in that for a moment. And of course, thank you for that portrait of Stefano. I'm like, I want to check this guy out. Thank you so much for that.
Hysterical. I was teaching poetry, and everybody's eyes stopped and looked at him.
You can teach it, or you can look at it. I guess that's the way it is. Well, thank you to all of the poets who've read in this first go round. That was Denise Provost, Lillo Way, Diane Tarby, Nicole M Young, and we ended up with Dianalee Velie. And we will be taking a 5-minute break. And when we come back, you will have the wonderful, wonderful experience of Tony B as your host. So 5 minutes, and we'll see everybody back in a few.
Thank you.
Everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. It's Tony B here to welcome you to the Fall Poetry Fest from the New England Poetry Club. It is our first. It will not be our last. Glad you're here spending time with us on this Sunday. Just to let you know some things, we are being recorded. And Zoom etiquette, please. Today we're presenting poets. We want everyone to be heard and to have their moment in time, so make sure you're all on mute. All of our poets today, they're presenting, they have about 10 minutes each. We really hope that you enjoy the poets. We know you will. And in fact, if you are, please put quotes inside the chat. Let them know directly and let us all know just how these poets are affecting you, the lines and the words that make you joyous. Thank you again for being here. Today, we have a wonderful lineup, and all of the poets, their bios, their links, their purchase information will be in the chat. Use the chat, y'all. Use the chat. First up today, we have the wonderful Christine Tierney. Christine, are you here?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, Christine, and you're ready.
Am I ready to go? Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you to the New England Poetry Club for sponsoring this, and to the awesome Tony B, Reggie Gibson, and Luisa Arroyo for hosting. I appreciate it. So yeah, I'm going to be reading from my new book, and this is what it looks like. It's called Chicken+lowercase = Fleur. And the only thing you need to know before I read is that lowercase is, I always like to just point out, is the name of a character created for the book. So yeah. All right. I'm going to start with a poem called, I'm going to take my glasses off because I am going blind. I'm going to start with a poem called Get a Friggin' Grip. Get a friggin' grip. This ain't no rose, no sickly sweet lilac, just a slump that imposes with its bend and hogs all the sun. Still, Elsie's compelled to figure this one out. She's a sucker for hidden beauty. The dank, fatty pores, the SOS-y limbs, and the parts that poke like the curled-in tips of burnt stars. Every day since this obsession began, she has been pacing the grounds where they spawn, digging into everything like a crack rabbit. Big, brooding, scentless fleurs, the death of them everywhere, and her sumptuous love for their jaw-dropping corpses. This is called The Ballad of Pinky Pinky Chicken. The Ballad of Pinky Pinky Chicken. Her belly holds me. I'm a nosy, nosy guppy. I spy as mummy knits square after square of soon-to-be Afghans. Daddy's Pinto chortles up the street. A million tools rattle in the back. I kicky hard. I kicky rock'em sock'em robot hard, and mummy drops her clacky needles in between the cushions of the couch. Mummy pats down the poof in her uncombed hair and steals the last smidgen of red rose tea from her pricey gold-rimmed teacup when she hears Daddy's brakes halt. Jangle go Daddy's keys as he Godzilla stumps up the creaky front steps. Before Daddy's mitt turns the handle of the warpy screen door, Mummy drags me in her swollen belly to the kitchen where we quickie check on dinner. Mummy stabs the tarnished fork tines into the chicken's plumpy, way too plumpy, why so plumpy breast, and panics as the pinky juices ooze on out. I stop squirming, ungently nudging, and Mummy cranks the heat up high. Crackle, spit, smoke, more smoke. Daddy's in the archway, breathing fire. Thanks. This is called Even During the Silent Treatments, They Make Noise. Even during the silent treatments, they make noise. Hurled knees against shag carpet, TV dinners, foil tops crushed into hockey pucks, ponytails with scraggled seams torn up the back, Elsie's dad scraping mac and cheese from a cold pot. For 3 days, they'd swipe pennies from the decanter in the pantry. For 3 days, they'd pretend mom wasn't in her room. Breakfast on the coffee table in the den, sword fights with Hot Wheels tracks and slotted spoons. This is called Y8. Y8. So, if mean pervy Gerald dropped a gardener snake down the back of your tucked in t-shirt, you'd what? Call the pigs? Maybe you'd scream like a big old pussy or flap your arms like a wuss bag. Not Elsie. She's that rusted frickin' lock on Mr. Migalachi's door that no one in the neighborhood can pick. She's that gargantuan rock with the spray painted smiley face dicks that the Marlboro light puffing posers make out on. See, even when the majorettes were chanting in Elsie's head, hey, hey, fatties don't tuck in, no, fatties don't tuck in, she didn't move one flabby muscle. She counted in 8s instead. 8 stabs of light from between the branches of the turd-tar trees, 8 snaky thrashes against her velveteen love handles, and she thinks she even counted 8 little snickers from her douchey cousin Kate with the titmouse feet who rubbed her smelly spit against her double-jointed thumb, declaring soul sisters forever. But what stands out most about that day mean pervy Gerald dropped that goddamn gardener snake down the back of Elsie's tucked in t-shirt is how for at least 8 friggin' minutes after she hit the deck, she tasted something like blood and cheese curls eddying around in her shit shy mouth. Thank you. This is called Not That Game. Not that game. Fragments of elk stirring in the soft wood paneling. He'd pin her down on the scratchy green shag, grab her cheeks with his blonde hooves and stretch them until the bitty cracks on her lips split wide. Say putty tat, she'd fight it. Say putty tat, she'd twist and squirm, jerk her head from side to side. Say it, pig, and I'll stop. He'd lower a milky line of drool from his stormy metallic mouth and then suck it back up before it landed. The smell, the gunky bits stuck in between, the weight of a boy's boundless fury draped across the length of her. This was not that game. He was not the boy who stopped. If you don't say it, I'll punch you. He was no dumb buck, knew where to hide his bronco marks. Sometimes she'd end up saying it, mostly not. Either way, his hot, acrid breath, brute bone klutz, landed on her anyway. And this is my final piece. Thanks for everything. Thanks for coming and thanks for having me. This is called Like a Canker, It Came Running. Like a canker, it came running. That was the spring she decided. A plan unraveled from inside her. She tricked all the mirrors, nicked them with kitchen knives, made parts of her pay. She came close to lopping, grabbed fistfuls of droopy hip and just squeezed. There was so much shoved in that begged to come out. It wasn't supposed to last. But what starts out as seed, even sickly, sponge, soppy seed, blooms. It got so bad that the knives rebelled and dulled, and she was forced to use her teeth, even the yuck, mucky, rotten ones, teeth against glass. When her teeth were all gone, pared down to grim nubs, she plucked out the bones in her sore and sorry mouth. One by one, she washed off the ticks of meat and dark, moussey cake, dried them by the mushrooming fire. She spent more than a fortnight sharpening her bones into stick pins shaped like her anger. It was fun. It was yummy fun. Then one afternoon, when the dastardly world was at work, she jabbed each and every one of those bones into her fatty, fatty heart. Thanks.
Christine Tierney, Poet.com. Christine says things like the curled end tips of burnt stars, kicky, Godzilla stomps for 3 days, a plan unraveled inside of her, like a mushrooming fire. Christine Tierney, Poet.com. Thank you, Christine. I appreciate you. We are listening closely. Praise the poet. Next, we will have Scudder Parker. Scudder, are you in the house?
I am.
Please give us what you got.
I'm Scudder Parker, and I had the good fortune to bring out my first book of poetry in June of 2020, so it got instantly buried. I think other people probably share that experience. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Reggie, Tony, and Maria Luisa and New England Poetry Club for making this happen, for inventing it, for organizing it, and for producing it. The first poem is "The Poem of the World reveals itself like a doe's hoof tapping ice till she can drink. Startles like the rust of purple on this fall's forsythia leaves, though it may have used that small voice every year unheard. Blinks like red and blue potatoes dug this morning, drying in the sun, testing their startled, untrained eyes. It's the unexpected tickle, the fit of shared laughter in our urgency of touching that becomes another way of making love. It's an ocean beach of pebbles that suddenly starts singing, each stone its own tink, together a glorious, indifferent song. And it's the voice of each bird I have only heard as morning chorus, landing with its own song and bright, perfect body in my brain. It is even now I begin to see them, the subtraction of birds, taking summer with them, too busy to announce their leaving. The poem of the world wants me to wake in my own body. It is astonished I might let these supple bones grow brittle. It is the sudden thing I trust. And this is Davey Rhode. A man in clothes the shape of sleep pushes his battered bicycle wire baskets front and back halfway up the drive and stops. He watches me raking gravel. You live here now? I pause, lean on my rake. I'm trying. We gossip like old neighbors. His family logged pine and maple, a few cows and chickens. Some summers a bear got all the corn. I tell him a bear got ours last summer. The house and barn were down there where you have your woodpile now. The house was small and cold as hell. The barn was built better. We go down, explore lilac, sprawling roses, honeysuckle, clumps of double daffodils, stacked granite slabs that held the barn. No sign of the house foundation. 5 generations in this place, and I 3 years. Twice since then, I've seen him picking up empties. Once, just his bike, leaning against a tree. This is called No Doubt. The year's great confidence of leaves is spent, and we, so busy losing, count it loss. All absence equally seems permanent. Our snowshoes on the snow crust leave no dent. Beach leaves cling and shiver like pale ghosts. They and our loved ones' days are fully spent. But we're resurrection schooled. The brave intent is comfort. The thaw will follow on the frost. Lovers return. The seasons permanent. Yet so many quit and seem not to or can't repent their leaving. Parents, species, stars, cross to the calm void. Another voice dissents in counterpoint, reminding we are meant to live like hummingbirds as they accost their blooms, essential and impermanent. It's spring. I am in loss. This is my present. To be in love with everything and more with loveliness that will be quickly spent. Still more because the loss is permanent. And this is the title poem, Safe as Lightning. Long before guilt was invented, this stream managed rocks without it. Never a threat or wheedle, just shifted them when strength was gathered. Changes from every storm were there for my exploration. That's how its small riffles and dark pools became such freedom for me. Neither worms I pierced nor speckled fish I hooked cried out in accusation. In turn, they claimed me, taught me to fin in place beneath a dark green overhang of rock. Oh, how the heart is taught to bargain, search the hard ground of obedience and its deceptions. I would rather sink my feet in black loamy banks where a holy beaver pond spills its disconcerting welcome through the trees. There is no promise I will be safe if I relinquish. It is a place where for a few years brook trout fatten and the silt accumulates until some torrent tears the sticks apart and I come exploring next June's fertile mud. Nothing I can promise spares the children. My grandson shudders at colliding arguments of thunder, but will not be denied the lightning. And this is called Talent Show. She played trumpet at a talent show in the church basement badly, with enormous enthusiasm. We snickered with almost no restraint at the music and her enormous, heaving 8th grade breasts. Fragments like this come flying at me like deadly pieces of space litter still in orbit after all these years. And here I am in the small safety of my delicate identity capsule. She may be a grandmother by now. We might recognize each other in the checkout line at Shaw's. She'd ask in her husky voice about my sister and brothers. I'd tell her the usual something. Perhaps I could wait for her to go through the line, walk with her to the parking lot, ask her about her life and listen. I've learned to do that. I suspect she'd forgive easily if I had the courage to ask. Or she might barely remember. For her, it was just another bunch of stupid boys acting like they did. Probably much worse happened. Yet here she is, listening to an old man explain what she's long understood. And then a final called Gratitude. The peonies and gladiolas are more seductive every fall. I choose slips of peony root with 3 buds full of color that may prosper years from now. I dig shaggy gladiola corms plumped on slender stalks, next year's replacements for the tough, exhausted husks left from the thrust of colored trumpets to the sky. Purple steeped in black, regal crimson, slim white Abyssinian, lavender that cries out to sunset orange. Bulblets cling intent on futures of their own. Beauty's nonchalant kindness accepts the slow learning of my eyes. A few days of October sun, they seem like gratitude, always a surprise. I plant the slips, come in and start the corms, possessed by past and future blooms. I remember how I dreaded grown-ups who creaked like closing doors. Even now I fear joy might never be allowed back through my window. But gratitude's a different eye that opens, unnerving in its great permissions. In sun on this cold porch, I'm grateful. Some shy part of me is always sitting here. No wisdom, no plan, full of psalms, no notion who I'm singing to. Thank you.
Give love to Scudder Parker. Thank you, Scudder Parker. ScudderParker.net. He has told us today, bright, perfect body. I'm trying, a bear got ours. It's spring. I am in loss, such freedom for me. Dark green overhang of rock silt accumulates. ScudderParker.net. Thank you so much for sharing. We celebrate your book. That was released in 2020. Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone here today. I do want to remind you all that we are recording here at the New England Poetry Club Fall Fest. I am the host that lands in the middle, and I'm happy about that. Thank you so much, Christine and Scudder. Next up, Paul Nemser. Paul Nemser, are you with us?
I am. Thanks, Tony. So thanks to the New England Poetry Club. Thanks to you and the other hosts. Thanks to the readers for reading, the listeners for listening, and all. I'm going to read today from my new book, which is called 1,000 Curves. And the book's title came from this poem, Mil Cumbres. Mil Cumbres. After the sagging colonial square came facades piled with columns of tires and a man's eyes the color of dried grass. I pulled over to ask for the right road. Sorry. I pulled over to ask for the right road. Every road leads to the capital, and none of the roads is good. Follow to the north, you'll see the way. But whatever you do, do not take the road to Mil Cumbres. We drove by roads marked north, wound through hills with dark green forest verging. Gray fingers drifted in from left and right, a mist wetter than rain. As the car climbed, roads slid in and out of view. Then down spirals rolled us like dice out of a cup, threw us back in and rolled us till the pavement spiraled up again. Once I pulled over onto a pine-heavy shoulder. A sign showed a foot stepping off a cliff. An hour more, a bus came head on for us. I swerved, one tire hung over the ravine, and yellow butterflies flew up, torn paper. Haze of a city far below, glints off tiny trucks on roads dug out of outcrops, glimpses of drivers coiling through crowds of igneous hills. Was there a number for this road? What did he mean, Mil Cumbres? We looked it up. 1,000 peaks, 1,000 curves. There were so many crescent moons that night, moons that sang to no one or sang to hills' pine-tarred ears alone. There was no way down. The next poem is about two artist friends, John Ember and Joe Hoy, people we've known for many years in Cambridge and Somerville and in Maine. John was sick with ALS, and he and Jill were painting portraits of friends. They invited my wife and me to come to the studio. And the poem is called In Winter, We Go to Have Our Portraits Painted. January and our artist friends can't draw us fast enough. There's an elevator in the bedroom, a sick bed in the studio. A helper holds the dying painter up by the belt. His wife squeezes blue onto the tray where she and her husband share paint. The artists look at us. They look as if we were swans eating so much snow, we go blank when low sun is in the eyes by the bleached bank of the green pond beside the greenless trees. But if they run the brush across the white just right, perhaps death will see none of us. I go right up to your portrait, breathe hard. Something so lifelike about those gray curls. It doesn't look like you, the man pants this out. The woman, with intense regard at her small canvas, continues her precise marks for minutes more. This doesn't either, she says, looking surprised. We love these people, and they love us, but neither one can catch us as we are, cutting lakes in slow, ruffling rings. The portraits mutate, unrecognizable to unrecognizable. Our friend dies. I lose my watch. It will take a year to find in the little drawer next to the bed. One day we are awake, brush of lingering blank light, bleached white plumes, eyes blackened, and you say, stay. So A Thousand Curves contains many poems about waking in the morning with the beloved, variations on the poetic form called an obad. And I'm going to read two of those poems now, and that'll be the conclusion. The first is called End of the Century. We've slept too long. That hasn't stopped the incidental warping. Constellations crossing, new diamond scratch on glass. Radio jumps off the nightstand as the Ramones hammer in the background their future, our present alarm. You were a Japanese print of stars before blocks of wood, a second of parallax before ticks were biting. I love the short form of you, though no one keeps time anymore. No one can say whose clouds have stolen the stellar normal curves. Darling, I remember now. I was supposed to report on goats and goat paths in Eden, to trace wrens flitting at the motionless peripheries, to stop the briefest moment as it shrinks like a tide. I have known so much less than awareness asked of me. Seaweed in the astral sea looks everywhere to find the light. A lovely lamented oil slick rocks at star sets. The great bear will soon bash a bird feeder off its pole, bursting a supernova of sunflower seeds. Nothing arrives as gears and maps predict. Nothing rings bright or smooth. I was supposed to report that the universe is kinked. Resistance is the lark song that estranges us from sea. There isn't any scratch we could call a note. I was supposed to record a tuna's blue thrashing in the foam of a soundless television storm. Wasps fly at our teeth, but miss and freak the screen. It is beautiful to hear the specks before we see them in a window, in the window, our window selves. And the final poem is called Obad. We wanted nothing but hearts, to be hearts purely, mounted on the knobs of perfect onyx backbones, laying in onyx cubes in the Museum of Hearts, or drifting through the archipelago of hearts, oyster nights, oil glint cities, shelves of sea. We scribbled letters to our hearts inside cabinet drawers, on the insides of a nautilus, on bubble chains left by a keel. We talked of fish bones crushed and added to a life, like exotic salts, and the night blue bouts of spring wind that skimmed down and swatted shearwaters, as if everything that matters were remembered from a darkness outdarkened by a fire. Wake with me. Let your voice bubble up like nymphs in a bay, where women chew on snails to stain their lips before they sing, and wailing dogs no longer make their reputations by snapping off the wings of wasps. Yes, I'm brutal as a boat. I dip, I loop, an old hull propelled by contrapuntal valves along built rivers under black bridges. You're a bird frantic on a needly branch out above the waves as they come in beating at riverbanks where the moorings feel the sea. Different heart wrecks, palpitations. Here they are, a wild red mash of crusts and ash. Won't everything be thrown fire first into the day? For now, a gray machine is driving waves and sky. Dock workers pull the morning moon up by her arms to watch her slither on carts or dive to sea and swim away. Thank you.
This is the massive applause that you are receiving, Paul Nemser. Thank you for sharing with us. My neighbor, Mr. Nemser, you can find his work at Red Mountain Press. He reminds us that pine heavy shoulder, squeeze is blue. We love these people. Incidental warping jumps off the nightstand to be hearts purely. Thank you. Just a little taste of Mr. Nemser's words. Thank you, all the poets and everyone here taking time on this wonderful Sunday to have your wonderful selves with us. We are being recorded. Thank you all for staying on mute and letting everyone have their moment in time. Next to the mic, we have Shanta Lee Gander. Oh, Shanta.
Thank you, everybody. This is such an honor, and thank you for the New England Poetry Club. And I'm going to be reading from Ghetto Claustrophobia. I don't know if this, okay. Looks kind of like a Alfred Hitchcock cover. So I'm going to read from the dream interludes in the center of the book. The Day God's Thermostat Broke, Ghetto Claustrophobic Dream Interlude. Biggie wanted one more chance while Foxy Brown was hoping someone would take her home tonight. And Spike Lee's ice cube on Rosie's breast in that movie imprinted like those lyrics. We all wish we had that ice cube, except our hot didn't look that cool. Heat turned bubblegum into lava that never let go of the bottom of our shoes. A reminder that God's thermostat was broke. The Walkman keeps skipping on that one song on that tape they took back to the store. They took that tape back to the store because what was a child doing listening to something that was vulgar? My music threatens Mama's music. She's screaming from the front seat. I can hear it all the way up here. TLC drowns out Millie Jackson. We are captives of the back seat. Skin sticks to car seats that are somewhere between leather and plastic. The air conditioning in the car is as broke as God's thermostat. McDonald's is our only hope. And pinching Maurice as we approach the golden arches is a promise that we might get there. When God's thermostat is broken, find other ways to keep busy. Keep away from strangers. Keep away from the places where you don't belong. Something about the way the heat brings about the more that would never cross your mind. Also, you are never supposed to talk to strangers, let alone pick them up in your car. Well, unless you know them. Even if you know them, you don't pick them up on a summer night. But isn't it safe if your friends are in the car? Wade was walking along the side of the road. Wade had to stay off and on at that place where everyone knows there are secret tunnels where they kept the patients. You know Wade. He was always on the corner. He'll freestyle a poem. He was always on the corner. He'll say something witty to draw you in. And those eyes. His eyes are a kind of brown-green colored, not noticeable enough to make him handsome. It wasn't just his words that made you know where he's been and where he's going again. You just knew looking into his eyes. The kind of eyes that made you peer in. The kind of eyes that spoke his crazy right into you when he talked. Speaking of crazy, sometimes boredom has a way about it, a kind of saunter like its twin, trouble. But they both show up when it's hot. See, trudging through snow or trying not to fall on ice don't work well for these two. Trouble and boredom manifested in a dude the color of one of the early spring flowers, color of forsythia. No government name, but a one-word, two-syllable street name. He was straight out of the Newport Pleasures ads, a cat with a slick look, and he bloomed what we didn't want. But like forsythia, he appeared on time and within his season. He made us pay attention to the way that day ate night, the way night ate children who had to succumb to the endless ride in the purple Cadillac. He made us pay attention to what happened when mamas felt the heat of a broken thermostat when their husbands are at work, the ghetto version of a bar hop. He taught us that people like houses are interchangeable. He taught us that like the endless tap in the bar hop, intoxicated cars stumble like the ones that had too many punches. And when cars stumble in the heat, they hit telephone poles. I think I'm going to end with lessons in development from a butterfly. Egg. At 5, my favorite yellow dress rips, a first lesson in how the body betrays. Barbie's body, the first way we learn that what the adults are doing. At 6, I'm introduced to butterflies by the way the adults spread their legs when they want something. A man visiting flashes his butterfly legs, no face or voice, folds his body to my level, hovering on the threshold. Go ahead, they say. Give it to them, they say, as the erosion of the bridge between gimme and mine becomes the tongue of girlhood. This long before a faceless woman with the same butterfly legs. This time, her yellow meat exposed by the black shorts. I remember because of the way she holds court amid mothers and children. Let me see, she'll demand, putting me on the road to be somebody's pretty baby. T-shirts will be no more protection than mothers and witnesses who collude encouraging, go ahead. Teaching how to memorize the answer to this question. Is this what a hug means in their language? Butterflies are nature's first lesson in deception, the first memory that beauty, like the adults in the human world, can be trusted. Larva. At 7, my body becomes a playscape, playing house gone wrong in dark closets, locked porches, all versions of oblivious babysitters. I become trained to the stares that pounce upon mouths to conceal touch, the same way mouths learn that naming, how his whistle hit my ass through smoke, a torn fence, and amid his boys won't earn protection. Instead, the adult asks, show us how you were walking. At 9, something like this. A walk turned run while being chased around a tree, avoiding the growing pile of hugs, kisses, and butterfly legs while a second grade class line stands still. The teacher watches, silently saying, boys will be boys. walk, turn, run, this time running up a hill. He pins me the way a dog pins its bone while his older sister watches. No kicking or screaming, get doors to open, nor anyone to believe. Is this what the other he meant when he said he was gonna get me? In this stage, some kinds eat their siblings, some kinds mimic royalty to become the queen in the corner of an ant colony. Celebration turned massacre. Pupa. At 12, all trick, no treat, and the Easter bunny's gone missing, the way tan scarves turn halter tops, and the cut denims have gone missing, like all the things that made me feel brown body beautiful, substituted with the fuzzy salmon colored robe with a broken zipper to conceal shame. Gem socks when pads have run out, the long cotton tube kind to hide the proof. Add the month that slips into 2 months, plus the years it takes to become fluent in secrets, bilingual in lying and silence. At 13, that age when I discover there is no elixir for hunger, no reason for the road dissolving between want and unwant, or the way brown body beautiful is found through his, and his lips. The beginning of sexual apprenticeship. Pay attention. A smile and flirting earns extra deli meat, a sway of hips and glimpse of daughter, a street vendor's discount on t-shirts. Allow a picture to be taken in a strange man's apartment who's not your husband, priceless. At this stage, some encounter a pupil rape, trapped within her chrysalis with no choice but to mate during this in-between state. Adult. If you don't set the price for your pussy, someone else will. It's worth extra meat, a discount, worth free food stamps, maybe gold, maybe a rabbit fur coat. It may be worth the things you can afford to buy yourself. At some age unknown, they all look the same. Questions, was-beens, the moments of being, the bone that refuses to stop singing, the same blur of guests who ask, was she good? Sometimes there'll be the boy at the bar with the fixed gaze glare who's really saying, I'm going to get you. Glares in all the ways legs become butterfly wings pinned open, traveling at the speed of time, passing multiplied by dark closets that become rooms, beds, plus the body that betrays. Always the body that betrays by attracting attention. This time I teach myself how to say gimme. This time I am fluent in no, minds, you can't have. If one makes it this far, she can dine off blood, the sweat of others, or tears. Beware. These butterflies emerge from their chrysalis as trained experts in survival. Thank you.
The bursting of the chrysalis, Shanta Lee Gander, shantaleegander.com. Shanta reminds us that skin sticks to car seat. You know Wade, witty, he bloomed. When cars stumble in the heat, pay attention. Thank you, Shanta. I appreciate your work. In this hour, our final poet will be Alexis Ask, but make sure you stay tuned after Alexis. We are going to have a small break, and then we're going to come back for one more hour, which will be hosted by Maria Luisa Arroyo. Please, we thank you all for being here. Alexis, I ask, where art thou?
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I'm going to be sharing some poems that I've written in the past year and a half, kind of exploring themes of apocalypses and hope. So my first poem, My Hope is Green. Maybe humans need hope. Oh, I'm going to start my timer. Okay. Maybe humans need hope because we aren't like trees who die every winter knowing they'll come back. Or maybe trees are afraid too. Maybe hope is what grows the little green buds back in March. Maybe that's why their leaves are always shaking. Maybe I am too. So I grow hope on every windowsill. Water it every morning. I want more things that are beautiful. Maybe if my apartment is a forest, I can pretend to be one of those cottagecore girls on Instagram, baking bread in flowing dresses and skipping through green meadows. Maybe if I make my apartment so alive, I won't see all the things dying outside my window. My neighbor shooting up on the doorstep tonight. Maybe he can see my hope growing in the window from where he sits. I want more things that are beautiful. Today I cut leaves from one of my hopes and place them in small glasses of water. When they grow roots, I will plant them and give them to my neighbors. Maybe if we all grow forests, we could turn the city back into dirt, a reclamation of land that was once holy and maybe still is. At the very least, we could fill every window. Part 2, we filled every window. Walking down the street, tendrils poke through cracks like fingers parting brick from brick. Green arms outstretched towards the sun, reaching for their long-lost mother. Mother says, I missed you. Welcome home. And the green spreads across the city like a blanket, leaves and stems and roots enveloping every wall, every storefront, every bus stop. And we breathe deeper now. And when the time comes, we all hear it. Run out to the streets to watch buildings crack like clay crumbling towards earth, where orchards grow in their place, and we make our beds among moss, our backs no longer aching like they once did. We pick peaches from where Alewife used to be. Who knew the apocalypse would taste so sweet? This one's called Still. Forget the word trauma. Forget money making and rent paying, forget my own name. Forget bodies, faces, feet, forget my own mother. Forget walls, floors, showers, forget it all. Then a name, a color. I think I knew that once. I think I had a name, had a body, had a shower. Who am I? Still. Not the name, not the memory, not the mother. Maybe I am a park at night. Maybe I am creaky swings. Maybe sunlight. Fallen leaves, a green shiny beetle. I feel sorry for ghosts. Don't tell me I'm not here, because I am, still. This one is called Where Did We Go? These days I've been learning how to roller skate, how to hold myself upright while the ground hurtles beneath me. It's really me who's moving though. The ground too, I guess, slowly. Things that move slowly are the sneakiest. Like looking in a mirror every day, I'm not a little girl anymore. I can remember the last time I was. I no longer wake up to the blinking buzzing of fluorescent lights. I wake up to the aching of my own heart and my lover's sleepy eyes on a good day. I've learned to roll out of bed, to brew remedy for the heart as it cracks, orange for energy, hibiscus for joy, valerian to calm. Did you know there is magic in this teacup? I am a witch of small rituals. I want to make my grandparents proud. Their dreams are on my lips tonight, and this music is on my hips. Can we just move a bit? This rhythm is that true kind. We are a people of joy, remember? I've heard the music playing from your porch. I've smelled the rice cooking in your kitchen. Don't tell me you can't dance. We are a people of joy, remember? This next one I wrote when I was working in a nursing home, and it's called Forgetfulness. I help him shower. I shave his face. He touches his chin and smiles. He calls me his daughter's name. The sweetness of remembering, a flash of love across his face, then gone again. And I think about forgetting, what a blessing it is to remember. To recognize my face in the mirror, I am often forgetful. I remember when I dance, on kitchen floors, wooden spoon in hand, childhood music pouring through rooms full of static and soul. I think about my best friend, how our movements mirror each other, how we are all just mirroring each other. Sometimes I forget myself when I dance, no longer a story, just a body, in space and rhythm. Sometimes I forget my body, just a soul in rhythm. And the rhythm feels like truth, feels like the only thing I know. My cells recognize it. Say yes, I remember this song. I remember this beat, this feeling. And then my hips remember. Whispers embedded within them, they tell stories as I move. And the stories look like circles, look like ancestors. My body knows who they are. Potion. All my t-shirts remember the stains of you. Sloshing and swirling every morning while I dance. Sweet and bitter, warm and comforting. Help me forget how much sleep I got, okay? Each sip a morning prayer, may today be better. This one is Generational Prayer. I slice ginger in your wake, garlic and onions. I pray for a different flavor on my tongue. I pray for bay leaves and Trinity. It's a rice and beans kind of night. Fill my belly and my bank account. I want to be compensated for this work, for all the words I cannot speak. I find anger in the sink with the dirty dishes. I scrub it clean, ready and waiting to be used. I find sadness in the pantry, a daily funeral for what's been lost, and I do weep at the altar of forgiveness. And by altar, I mean stove, and by weep, I mean shed, onion skin tears thrown in with the compost, where I find a lemon seed sprouting. This one is called To Remember. I whisper love letters to myself. On good days, I wear skirts, so I can feel fabric swish over my legs. And I know pleasure is ginger tea and hoop earrings, is violets growing next to sidewalks. I skip instead of walking. Watch me dance, see my joy. I am unbreakable. My body is not a crime scene and neither is yours, but it is miracle and always has been. This is the last one I'm gonna read, and I wrote it recently and it's still untitled. Tonight I dream of oak trees dripping in foamy green moss, of rice cooked with spices and onions just right. I dream of walking to the corner store for a soda, the dollars clenched in my hands like gold, like precious secrets, like dreams. I sit, I walk, I bathe, I, and you. I dream of you. I dream of you walking to the corner store for a soda, the dollars clenched in your hands like dirt, like infinities to be planted, to be tended, to be grown, like dreams. You swim, you skydive, you, and we. I dream of us. I dream of us sitting under oak trees dripping in foamy green moss, bellies full of rice cooked with spices and onions just right, the dollars buried below us, waiting for them to sprout, knowing they never will, laughing that they never will, but we know how to plant, how to tend, how to grow. So catch us smiling, catch us sleeping, catch us jumping through worlds that we will create. Thank you everybody so much for listening.
Thank you, Alexis Ask, a poet, artist, and dancer. Be on the lookout for her work. She tells us, I want more things that are beautiful, green arms, I missed you. Who knew the apocalypse would be so sweet? We are people of joy. Remember, to remember, bay leaves and Trinity. You know, Alexis, a lot of us here on this call are a little bit older, but I do want to remind people that Alexis told us to keep skipping instead of walking. Thank you for your words, Christine Tierney, Scudder Parker, Paul Nemser, Shanta Lee Gander, and Alexis Ask. Thank you all. Thank you, New England Poetry Club, for hosting the first Fall Fest. I am Tony B. Our first hour was hosted by Reggie GIBSON. Our final hour will be hosted by Maria Luisa Arroyo. I do ask, folks, grab some tea, take a little rest, because we will be back in about 5-6 minutes, and we will continue on. Thank you, New England Poetry Club, and to everyone who came here on this wonderful Sunday, thank you so much. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back in about 6 minutes.
Welcome. And as a warm reminder, please note that this reading will be recorded for posterity and to share back with the poets as well. My name is Maria Luisa Arroyo, and I have the joy of being your host for the 3rd hour. Reggie Gibson and Tony B were the hosts for the prior 2 hours. And we thank you all who have had the stamina to stay through 3 hours of poetry. I, for one, feel like my spirit has been lifted. I have the joy of introducing 5 poets, and to let you know too, is that please keep your mics muted. And also note that the poets' bios and the information about their purchasing their books will be available in the chat. At the same time, if a line resonates with you, please feel free to include that in the chat as well. And as a warm reminder to the poets, as please share the power of your voice. And at the same time, note that staying under 10 minutes is highly encouraged. If one surpasses it, I will just give a gentle reminder. Without further ado, I have the joy of introducing Magdalena Gómez.
Thank you, Maria Luisa Arroyo, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this event. How is my tone? Is my voice good here? Okay. And I want to thank the New England Poetry Club as host and all of the poets, because you're inspiring me and exciting me, and I'm so happy to be here. And I want to begin by extending an invitation to all of you. I have a global podcast called Jazz Ready, and I am actively seeking poets for our global audience. Submission is super easy, and you can find out all about it at latinapoet.com. I believe in reciprocity. You're giving to me, so now I want to give to you. The poems I'm reading today are all based on truths in my life. The first one happened when I was 18 years old. Playland, Times Square, 1971. Big time reaches the ceiling, palms flat. Hot, pink-hatted, feathered, velvety pimp attempts to recruit me at the arcade as I restack the oak ski balls after the slot steals a hard-earned quarter from a high school dropout paper boy. His would smile the slick ebony of a thick, thick body is a well-tended house in times of plenty. Celia, his stories told with wild prairie trillium eyes. This big time, big time. I admire the gold cross at his neck, Jesus bulging like winter's thumb, as if pulling away from his fate. This Jesus cost a pretty penny, you say? I've yet to see a penny with my face on it big time, so how's it gonna be pretty? He leans into my Bronx with his Harlem. My hands push flat against his chest. No man can afford me big time. My price is too high. No pennies, no dollars, nothing that's been mined. Only a man who dares all of who I am will ever get my cup to hold his wine. Don't get me wrong, big time, you're sweet for a pimp, surprisingly kind. You tempt me a bit. I could use the money. Try again, the day I lose my mind. And this one I dedicate to my father. When we were kids, we called these watches bulobas. Some say Bulova, some say Bulova. Bulova. Papi's watch wide on the wrist. Log manhood. T-shirt, guayabera. Long sleeve, short sleeve, one good coat. A month's wages for wingtips. Papi said the watch was gold, that's what he was told. Time matters most to the ones who never miss work. Hands can't stop winding, cleaning, adjusting for equinox, solstice, no scratches allowed. Removed for the fight, no broken face, no smudge, all shine. Nights soft landing on the dresser dish, holding the gold that would one day be my inheritance. And yesterday, as people honored the memories of the dead, of the heroic, and of the victims of 9/11, I think then and today, what I thought the day that it originally happened is that our flag should always be at half-mast. Because 9/11s are happening all of the time, all over the world, and in our own communities. And sometimes the deaths are from hunger, and sometimes the deaths are from thirst, and sometimes from domestic violence, and most often globally due to war. And I wrote this when I was going to read with Cindy Sheehan for the Gold Star families. Time to clean house. Desert sands will not be still in torrents of wind. The dead cannot be hidden or draped in the splendor of ceremonial speeches. There are not enough flags to mop up the blood of Iraq or sift cancer from the salt of Yekes. There are not enough hymns to silence the detonating hearts of grieving mothers. Not enough thanks from a grateful nation. Sorrow, the language that binds them. Rage, the sound we can all understand. Action, the universal prayer. Resistance, the holy hand of God. A circle in time, and that time has come. Justice has not spoken English for a very long time. And I will continue to say our flag should always be at half-mast until it is no longer true. And I want to end with a series of poems that I call my HIPAA violation poems. And by the way, the previous poem that I dedicated to Cindy Sheehan and the Gold Star families is from my collection, Shameless Woman, which deals with family and war, womanist issues, and others. Okay, it's not your appendix. The pain is on the left. Sent home with fever, stomach virus, and a barf bag. 3 days later, I was telling my husband I'd give him 1 year to grieve and then get over it, find someone. Surgeon's eyes We're calling time of death before its time as gangrene quick-stepped its way to bacterial homicide. I assured my scalpel-wielding Zorro I was ready. Told the anesthesiologist, not to kill me, puñeta. We laughed. Okay, no talking golf or cruises. Just pipe in some Marvin Gaye. Deathbed promise. Tell the pendejos in ER that pain radiates. Thank you.
That is Magdalena Gomez. Thank you so much for your reading.
Thank you, my pleasure.
You know, so many points resonated in terms of your interweaving of, you know, using a watch as a metaphor, having to be safeguarded against the hardness of living, you know, and also to just duly noted in terms of the message that our flag should always be flown at half-mast, you know, to respect the traumas that are happening around the world and in our communities. And I will put in the chat, you know, Magdalena's reference to the latinapoet.com, where she's invited everyone, if you want to participate in Jazz Ready. It's a marvelous way to have global reach with your poetry. So thank you again, Magdalena. Now I have the joy of welcoming Michael Goldman as our next poet. The gallery view. Is Michael here?
I am here.
Wonderful and welcome.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So thank you, Maria Luisa. I am Michael Favala Goldman. I've written 3 books of poetry. I'm also the translator of 17 books of Danish literature, including Dependency from the Copenhagen Trilogy by Tove Ditlevsen. And for fans of that work, I can tell you that I've translated 2 collections of her short stories, and they'll be out from Penguin and FSG in about 6 months in late winter. So you can look forward to those. But today I'll be reading a few poems from my recent book, Slow Phoenix. The first 2 poems touch on humanity's relationship to nature and were featured in the recent Northampton Biennial sponsored by the Forbes Library. The first one harkens back to my time as a carpenter contractor. This is Clearing the Lot.
Give me a second, Jonathan. I need to exit this Zoom meeting here.
Okay.
So that's a wonderful reminder. Please make sure that your microphones are on mute. Thank you.
All right, great. So back to the poetry. This first poem is Clearing the Lot. It's nothing for a large machine, rumbling, shaking the air, rolling slowly on enormous black tires, hydraulic fluid veins under pressure, joints greased to lift its bucket arm, according to delicate movements of pudgy fingers from within the glass cabin. Then to press bucket to coarse bark of vibrant chestnut oak, and a foot sole lowers the worn steel plate, opposes the spring mechanism to the floor so the engine roars like a bull straining against an ancient yoke, and slowly tilts the life of a century, roots stretching and snapping, losing its hold on the earth, leaning to unfamiliar horizontal, and the shrill engine noise retreats, the bucket arm retracts, lowers, ready for more. The reprieve. When the damp strips of cast-off bark lie slack, like leather tongues on the old boundary stone wall, and the rabbit tracks leave an icy staccato in the snow, I tire of myself sitting hours at my desk and let myself be drawn by the cold, hazy sun out into the pathless woods, where stout trees stand half-dressed, draped in damp moss to the north, but bare to the south in half-naked anticipation. There's a place where water seeps slowly past to the bog, with stones large enough for stepping, and a single Japanese multiflora rose sinks its thorns into my coat as I walk by to enter the stand of white birches. Nearby are vernal pools, charted by my occasional hiking partner, who photographed and registered the pools when he got wind of a developer who is planning to build 84 houses here. Past the birches, the soils get sandy, there below the snow cover. Just perfect for the endangered turtles who plot around there, some with expensive radio antenna, so that the developer might know where he may and may not dig. I recall the neighborhood meeting earlier this week, when our city planner announced that all these woods and the bog and the vernal pools and the turtles had been purchased by the city as conservation land. Except for a handful of building lots out at the edge of the road, all this would remain more or less as it is now. And I wondered if anyone had told the land it was given a reprieve, or if I was the first, that the turtles can relax, the coyotes and toads can count on returning to their hunting and breeding grounds. Another season, the saplings can continue to stretch in the shadows of their giant forebears. And when I tire of myself and this great disjointed world threatens to pull me apart with it, I will still be able to slip off to this place where the strips of bark lie slack on the stones and the damp moss clothes the sturdy trees. I was a beekeeper for 8 years, and I've been married for 31. And both of these experiences come into play in this next poem. The next two poems actually appeared in Silkworm Journal. This is Let's Play the Bee Game. All the males lumber around the house or hang out on the porch, getting fed by the females and growing fat and lazy. The males are harmless. If they get excited, all they can do is make loud droning noises. Their one job is in the spring to fly up and have sex in midair with the queen, who rips out their penis and they drop dead. The unsuccessful drones hang around until winter, when the females throw them out to die in the cold. Meanwhile, all the females except the queen are workers who tend to the males and also to thousands and thousands of eggs and babies, keeping them warm, fed, and cozy in tiny rooms made of wax flakes, which the females peel from their bellies. On nice days, they fly to thousands of flowers, wearing down their wings to provide food for everyone. They do not like to be disturbed and are quick to defend. Females have stingers, but if they use them, they die. This next poem is dedicated to that person in your life with whom you may have an entanglement which defies description. The contract. I will make you miserable for years. You will make me miserable for years. I will love you despite this. You will love me despite this. I will blame myself for hurting you. You will blame yourself for hurting me. though it wasn't my fault, though it wasn't your fault. I will be patient while you are lost. You will be patient while I am lost. I will take the journey back to myself. You will take the journey back to yourself. In the distance, I will see you waiting for me. In the distance, you will see me waiting for you. I have a small family, but we're pretty close-knit. So it was a big step 6 years ago when we moved my son out to the Midwest, where he still lives and works. This poem was published in Common Ground Review. Water. The heart's pericardium membrane aches like hell if you stretch it all the way to Chicago. Nothing against the Second City or the terrific Russian restaurant there off Michigan Street where we had our last dinner, and all the waiters incessantly filled our water glasses. Good for the heart, drinking water, till it leaks out the eyeballs, lowering our salt, which they say is also good. My heart stretches all on its own. Though it hurts, I want it to. So all my books are available on my website. It's my name, michaelfabalagoldman.com. I also lead poetry groups, poetry critique groups twice a month. I've been doing that for over 3 years. They're co-sponsored by Straw Dog Writers Guild and the Northampton Center for the Arts. And I also do book talks and provide editorial consulting for translating and also for poetry. And feel free to write to me anytime at hammerandhorn@gmail.com. And I have one last poem, which is the title poem of Slow Phoenix, and it appeared in Stoneboat Literary Journal. As you probably know, the phoenix is a bird from mythology that when it reached a certain age, it would catch fire and then rise again from its own ashes. This is Slow Phoenix. Sometimes I feel resentful about having my problems. But as the days pass and I don't burst into flames, I'm thinking I have just enough problems to keep me moving. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much, Michael Goldman. Please make sure to check the chat, Michael, for the wonderful feedback that you received, and also for the website as well, for those of us who are on this call to want to buy his work so far. And what I want to share in terms of some resonances between Magdalena Gomez's and Michael Goldman's work in terms of this transformation of experience of justices and injustices into poems. In Magdalena's instance, the womanist stance, and also the community injustices, and also with Michael, that environmental, justice as well too resonated with me. And also in both instances, this amazing way of capturing dynamic complexity in relationships. So thank you both so far. Amazing. All right. I have the joy of bringing on to the call or spotlighting here Lisa DeSiro, and if I mispronounce anyone's name, please do correct me. All right. Please welcome Lisa DeSiro.
Thank you, Maria Luisa, and you did pronounce it correctly. I'm going to start by reading, and also I just want to say thank you to everyone with the New England Poetry Club. I'm very grateful to be part of this special event. I'm going to start with 2 poems from my first book that came out 3 years ago. And I chose these 2 because they are relevant for right now. 9/11 anniversary public garden. Go ahead, enjoy this day. It is a lovely time of year to be in Boston. There's plenty of sun, a mild breeze, lush, lingering, summery warmth, even in late afternoon. Notice how the ducks, geese, pigeons, squirrels all attend to their normal business. The people, too, look at them go, busily back and forth, treading the worn footpaths beneath the wise old trees. A typical ratio, locals and tourists, students, suits and skirts, families and couples in a flurry of activity, talking on phones, walking dogs, shooting photos, pushing baby strollers, and loners sitting on benches or on the grass, reading, eating, watching the passers-by. See, everyone is represented here, men, women, and children, a variety of age, race, ethnicity. Observe the swan boat following its habitual route, gliding in slow motion across the surface of the shallow pond. Now listen, the Arlington Street church tower bells begin tolling. First, hymn phrases, Ode to Joy, Amazing Grace, A Mighty Fortress is Our God. Then, Someone to Watch Over Me. Hashtag millennial. At night, the sky was white and full of crows instead of stars, and each beak offered a shiny prize. They goaded, buy a scratch ticket, can't win if you don't play. Those lucky enough to pluck one turned into loons and flew underwater. We carried buckets bare-knuckled, sanitized our hands. Before masturbating, we turned the family photos face down on the bureau. They urged, reduce, reuse, recycle. The weather kept getting weirder until the seasons got scrambled. We were all thumbs on our dumb phones, texting everything verbatim. LOL, OMG, WTF, TTYS. They twittered, this event occurs in the past. Replies are no longer required. Now I'm going to switch it up, change of pace a little bit. And if I have time, I'm planning to read 4 sonnets from my new chapbook that came out this year from Kelsey Books. And these are a little bit more lighthearted overall, exploring dating and relationships from the perspective, primarily from the perspective of a single woman. But I think oftentimes these things can apply to perhaps almost anyone who's had to be out there in the dating world. Hindsight. Looking back does no good for me to ask, how could you not see the irony? His name was Tom. He was a starving artist drummer who talked dirty and confessed his daily struggle with depression, then revealed another foible, late night looking into people's windows. Which was worse, his crime of peeping or to sleep with him? Eyes closed, I stroked his bumpy, frail spine like I was reading Braille. We both were blind and guilty of wanting love, wanting love. So I like to play around with the sonnet form, and I don't always follow the traditional rules, except that they're all 14 lines. Alter ego. She only drinks drinks whose names end in vowels, margarita, mojito, martini. She has perfect vision, eyes wise as an owl's. She looks fabulous in a bikini. She dresses in dresses whose cut always flatters her figure, elegant, hip. She knows it's today, not tomorrow, that matters. She always leaves a big tip. She's the girl who remains on Saturday nights when last call is announced at a bar. Her gentleman minions get into fights over who takes her home in whose car. Let them fuss and fume and try to decide, she thinks. I'm taking them all for a ride. Metamorphosis. It's Kafkaesque, this awful sense of dread as I brush and floss and wash. Hard to say which role you'll pick tonight for me to play before I get undressed and get in bed. The cruel, tormented lover, tender groom. When at last you let me fall asleep, I dream I'm babysitting children. One, a boy, is crawling unattended. Look out, I cry, afraid he'll harm himself. But then a little girl tackles him gently with a hug onto the wide plush oriental rug. He lies there on his back like a beetle, flailing arms and legs. Not hard to see which one symbolizes you, which me. And just one more to leave on a sort of playful note. The middle-aged Taurus laments. Hey baby, what's your sign? Used to be the pickup line. Things were easier back then. You could ask potential men their date of birth, then try them out. I tried a Capricorn, lusty goat, a water bearer, Aquarius, slippery fish, a Sagittarius, restless archer, even once a Leo, sweetly roaring dunce, and more, all incompatible. And now who'd want to pet the bull I've become? Screw the stars. My planet's Venus. Men are from Mars. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Again, a reminder, please, to check the chat for the positive feedback leads that you received. And at the same time, for others that her information about her books are in the chat. Next, I have the joy of introducing Virginia Crawford. So please unmute yourself, Virginia.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much to the New England Poetry Club for including me. It's wonderful to hear all of you. I'd like to read a few poems from my new book, Questions for Water. And I feel like I didn't really write my 9/11 poem until relatively recently, so I thought I'd start with that. American Mom. After a US missile kills an Iranian leader, we are told to expect retaliation. Your brother is thankful he's 2 years shy of 18. I stop myself from saying wars last many years. Instead, I look at the map for the place our friends mentioned in Canada, if it comes to that. Of course, the route goes through that most beloved target, New York City, where you, my daughter, happen to be visiting a friend. Not knowing if I will alarm you, or if you will then ignore, I text, first ask how you're doing. Working up to no one knows where or when, but Iran says it's going to start killing Americans. Please consider some places that might be safe if something happens. Just like that, it's 18 years ago. You were 6 months old. A student ran in saying the plane hit a tower. The radio told us a second tower. Authorities considering shutting down 95, which I used between your sitters and the college. I raced to get you, then home. I held you on the sofa in front of the TV where the planes flew through that bright blue Tuesday sky, into the towers again and again and again. I text and ask for any addresses of friends you might go to if something happens nearby. And I have to explain I'm on the sofa, remembering everything covered in ash, humans covered in ash, humans running anywhere away, news that phones were jammed, all the people who couldn't find their people. Then papers posted to walls, often with pictures. Have you seen? Then lists and lists of names. I never want to not be able to find you. If I have addresses, if I can't reach you, hopefully I could see on a map that you are safely blocks and miles away from where it happened. You send your friend's address. I darn your wool sweater in my lap. And second, I'd like to read a poem that features my son, actually. We, for 13 years, went to Vermont and did a camping trip to Vermont in the summer. And then sometimes we also visited there in the winter. So this poem comes from a return journey, traveling south in a snowstorm. As my son and I leave northern Vermont, everyone's saying it will be okay once you're on the highway, even after someone gets stuck at the top of the driveway, even after their rescuer slides into the ditch. I pray no one's coming as we continue up the hill, turn onto the road, slushy with snow and ice. Small as I am, I hunch over the wheel, trying to see through crystals multiplying across the windshield. Every few moments, a thin stream of blue fluid, a flash of wipers. I wonder how much fluid there is, how long crystals will try to occupy the windshield. I focus on the tracks made by the car ahead of us. In the graphic novel my son reads, a superhero teleports to Mars to escape humanity. Many times I have wished for such power. Snow and ice continue to fall on this rural unlit highway. No way to delineate lanes or shoulder, even if I could see the road's surface. Our wheels spin and slide, stomach, hands, mind turn into the slide. The dashboard indicates it is 26 degrees. The windshield crystallizes again. I almost give up. To fear, my desire for our bodies to remain unharmed, but I've already reserved a room for the night. It is 28 degrees outside. I persist at the raging pace of 40 miles an hour. My son sleeps an hour, 2. After 6 hours, snow and ice are rain. In Connecticut, it is 33, then 34 degrees. At breakfast, we each make a waffle, pour the batter, close the irons, red numbers count down. We face the TV news. American Jews are being attacked. European Jews are being attacked. In Australia, there's a town dark 2 hours after sunrise. Smoke so thick, all is darkness, maybe midnight without stars. In another town, the air appears to be dyed red. There will be no fireworks over most of Australia this New Year's. Then video, kangaroos bounding across brown land, each body's singular exertion, the ancient brain commanding all effort and energy toward its intention to survive. Their flight jolts me, seeing these large mammals, the immediacy of desperation, the way we have become far too accepting of the desperation around us. In my son's book, the hero asserts every human being is their own thermodynamic miracle. This truth, a momentary refuge to me, the hero decides to interrupt the annihilation of humanity that has already begun. The illustrations, heaps of bodies, so much blood, a poster advertising the pale rider playing with crystal knocked. I suck in my breath. We are 50 miles from where last night someone broke into a rabbi's home into the celebration of the seventh night, wielding a machete. Back on the road, I am momentarily comforted by the relative normalcy of the New Jersey Turnpike. Access to bathrooms, food, running water, and soap. The rest stop, this rest stop dedicated to Edison, who said our biggest mistake is giving up. In the bathroom, almost always being cleaned by Hispanic women, signs asking, "Estás buscas una salida?" Are you looking for a way out? Given all these truths, all the confusion and blood and miracles, all the horrors our children are inheriting, I have no idea what to say to my son. I can't say anything if I open my mouth. All I can do is be there, silent, sad, my hand on my son's shoulder. I thought I would end with a shorter one that's a little less dramatic. Dreams of the future. One evening I return to find my children grown. They don't need me to make their food, wash their clothes, read their books aloud. I stand in the living room and wonder. One evening I return to find my husband, an old man in a chair too large for him. I look down at the lines on my hands, then for a window to use as a mirror. One evening I return to find my home a forest, trees instead of sofa, stars instead of ceiling. I sit down and watch until the sun shows herself, then pull the fallen leaves around me and sleep. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. That was Virginia Crawford. Please, Virginia, check out the chat in terms of responses to your poetry reading. And others, a reminder, please check the chat for purchasing information. And again, I marvel, I think everyone does, marveling in terms of the spontaneous affinities between poets. You know, we don't know how, we do not know the worlds that each poet will share in the 10 minutes that they have. So in Lisa's instance, I love the playfulness of your sonnets, and your use of persona in them, and at the same time, the poignant public commemoration of 9/11. And when we go into Virginia's poem, it's a familial private space commemorating 9/11, and also a complexity of dynamic relationships, and again, that resonating line in terms of the world, that our children inherit, the horrors our children inherit. Well, thank you so much. I've been marveled and buoyed and awed by the poets all day so far. So last but certainly not least, I want to welcome Gloria Monaghan, and please note if I did not pronounce your name correctly, please do correct me. All right, and just a gentle reminder again that this is being recorded. So welcome, Gloria Monaghan.
Thank you, Maria. It's the G is silent. There's not many of us left but that's okay. Thank you so much. And I really want to say thank you so much to the New England Poetry Society, to Wendy and Hillary and Mary this is a tremendous amount of work. And I also want to thank the advisors, the Board of Advisors, for also your work and your enthusiasm in celebrating the poets and bringing people together. It's awesome. I'm very glad it's recorded, because for the first part of this, I missed, and I'm happy you guys are recording it. So thank you very much. I I'm going to follow suit with 9/11 poem. You're probably maybe tired of it now, but I'm the last one. This is really short. And it's weird because I dreamt that this happened before it happened. And I know that happens a lot with people where there's a huge event that they kind of collectively dream that it's going to happen. And I want to encourage people that work with dreams to keep using your dreams in your work, because it comes from somewhere else. It's so fascinating, isn't it? So this is from my first chapbook of poems called Flawed. And it's put out by Finishing Line Press. And I'm happy to see that a lot of people here also have worked with this, Lee Mays and her wonderful publishing company. Flawed. In the dream, they boarded the plane to London, brother and sister, traveling together like so many times in childhood. Settling into the white and blue interior of the plane, pulling away from the terminal, the gate, she thinks, we will die here and now, finally. They lift away from Earth until the land becomes an outline of something unreal, a place they never knew. Fear stays in her stomach. They drift into the sky. She realizes they are leaving the Earth's atmosphere, and her throat closes. The plane is flying impossibly high over New York City. She sees the bombs go off beneath them, a war. She turns to her brother, who is also looking out the window as they drift into outer space. She was, at the time, like a leaf blowing on a fall day before dusk. And just gonna read, I try to read like timely poems because I love nature so much. And this is from, unfortunately, this press went under during COVID. It's a wonderful, it was a wonderful, beautiful press. And it's just really depressing. Flutter Press, she had other presses as well. You know the song by George Michael, Careless Whisper? Anybody know that one? Okay. So this is kind of, thanks Tony. This is kind of co-opted from it. Careless Whisper. I was in the mood of forgetting, between the evening and the day and the careless whisper. Breath of one person to another, nocturnal dream where the empty wet streets are abandoned and all the people have left town. You and I start arguing with our two children standing next to us. Empty dream, wet streets, that movie, in that movie with Paul Newman and Piper Laurie. He's the pool player and she's the crippled one who reads a lot and then kills herself. I heard a cat in my dream, or was it a child? The snow is melting and it should make me happy to see the sun on the blind like the summer, but the body is heavy and tired. I'm the broken down fighter after a long round with a bigger guy on the other side of the ring. Houndstooth, wool pants, gold brooch. Who sold the house? Is the car for sale? Who walked away? Who paid the bill? Who wore fur in March? Who likened the moon to a girl smiling and sitting wearing her love on her face for all to see and admire? Careless whisper against the bricks. We are falling under the fluorescent lights. You pull me into you like the tide over mussel shells, half broken. Shellacked in the sun, irretrievable, immobilized. So I'm just going to read a couple of short poems because I'm the last, and I want to thank everyone again for bringing this together. Poetry is the thing that really heals us, especially during the year and a half that we've had and moving into the future. This is from my recent book, Kelsey Press. So many of you also have worked with this press, called Hydrangea. I wrote this
this poem after I was diagnosed, like unfortunately many of us, with cancer. And I'm happy to say that I'm recovered. And I want to say a shout out to people right now who are dealing with this. Into grace. My voice is no longer recognizable. My fingers have betrayed me. The way the body moves on. An older fighter, heavy, broken, disrepaired, into grace. I have focused on the curled brown leaves of the lawn, and even how the very next day, everything has changed. But you know, there's always hope, thank God, for Dante. So this is called Thanks for the Rain, Part 1. The white hyacinths found their way to the side garden, and the grape hyacinths mysteriously border the broken fairy, who frankly could not endure the winter. I'm with her. Pleasant face, fleeting skirt. Show me she still has her resolve, but for how long? And this one's called Gypsy Moths. In the garden, the birds chirp, the crows caw, a saw penetrates the air. Gypsy moths have taken over and are circling the house like little pieces of fluttering paper. They move fanatically against the screen. Let me in, let me in. But once in, they bang themselves against a curtain, desperately looking for a way out. Is this their life, filled with extreme indecision and desperation? The cats stare, no longer amused by their flight, no longer captivated by the movement of the small bodies. It may as well be a shadow to them. Where are the butterflies? Where are the small white butterflies? I'm grateful for the pink teacup roses and the stamina of the tiger lilies. I'm grateful for my fingers, hair, and body, the way my arms spread and come back to me, the motion of a breaststroke. In the garden, people prepare their lawns. Still, the birds mingle with each other, and the grass sings its deep song. And going to read 2 more short ones, and that's it. Sheets. The wind blows the orange curtains in the room. They billow in the mid-August air over lilac-flowered sheets. I'm reminded of the ocean and how the waves pull my whole body into redemption. People are talking about how summer is ending. Have they no heart? You came to me in a dream before I met you. There were roses in the garden of the small white rocks. You told me things I never knew. Was it Nietzsche who said, if you stare long enough into the abyss gazes into you? What was he talking about? Echo and Narcissus? The shadow before 6 at night in the garden? Or the light before the morning? And this is the last poem, and it's just about surprise. And I want to thank everyone so much, all of you. Tulip tree. The purple salvia turned up in the border garden today, along with the white and blue morning glories. They occupy my mind. On the hammock, I face the tulip tree. Somehow the small pink and red roses started to rebloom. I figured no one told them summer was ending. Those small flowers just come up out of nowhere, uninvited and adored. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Again, Gloria Monaghan. Please make sure to check the chat for feedback, and also for all of us to just remind ourselves that the chat has information about all the poets who read today. And again, thank you everyone, Magdalena Gomez, Michael Goldman, Lisa DeSiro, Virginia Crawford, and Gloria Monaghan for an amazing third hour in our first Fall Fest, sponsored by New England Poetry Club. Thank you for your gift of your time this afternoon. Have a wonderful rest of the day.